In a galaxy teeming with advanced civilizations, humanity stood at the edge, an untested species viewed as fragile and insignificant by the Galactic Federation. The Council, composed of towering, multi-limbed beings and glowing, amorphous entities, debated the value of Earth's inhabitants. Primitive, one alien scoffed, its voice like grinding stones. They lack the strength, intelligence, and resilience of more evolved species. A verdict was reached. Humanity's worth would be tested by a singular trial. A human would be sent to Zerathes, a hostile, uninhabitable planet where even the mightiest species had perished. The Council's intent was clear: failure would justify humanity's dismissal from the Federation, their role reduced to mere laborers for superior beings. When Earth received the challenge, the decision to participate was unanimous. To the humans, this was more than survival, it was a matter of pride. Captain Eli Carter, a decorated explorer known for his ingenuity and calm under pressure, volunteered without hesitation. "If this is how they measure us," he said before departure, "then I'll show them what a human can do." Eli stood in the transport bay of the Federation's flagship, surrounded by alien observers. Their gazes ranged from skeptical to outright dismissive. The Council provided him with minimal equipment, a basic survival suit, a multifunctional tool, and a data recorder. It was all they deemed necessary for documentation, not survival. As Eli prepared to board the drop pod, an alien delegate approached, its translucent body pulsating with disdain. "You'll last an hour, at best," it sneered. Eli responded with a quiet smile. "You might want to keep the timer running longer than that." The pod launched, plunging Eli into the atmosphere of Zerathes. Through the small viewport, he glimpsed the planet's surface, a swirling maelstrom of blackened skies, jagged terrain, and an eerie glow emanating from the ground. The air inside the pod grew thick with tension as automated systems struggled to stabilize the descent. The moment Eli landed, the full weight of Zerathes bore down on him. The air was barely breathable, laced with chemicals that stung his lungs despite the suit's filtration. Violent winds howled across the barren landscape, carrying sharp particles that scraped against his visor. The terrain itself seemed alive, shifting unpredictably as though resisting his presence. Eli moved quickly, his instincts honed by years of survival training. He located a small cave nearby and secured it as temporary shelter. Inside, he activated the data recorder, speaking in calm, measured tones. Day 1. Conditions are worse than expected. Air toxic. Shelter established. Adapting begins now. He spent hours analyzing his surroundings, cataloging threats, and improvising tools. The Council had underestimated him. Humanity's strength wasn't brute force, it was adaptability. As night fell, Zerathes revealed its most terrifying feature: massive creatures stalking the terrain, their outlines visible against the dim glow of the horizon. Eli sat in the cave, his resolve unshaken. He wasn't just surviving for himself, he carried the weight of humanity's worth on his shoulders. "They think this will break me," he muttered, gripping his tool. "But they don't know what we're made of." The planet was relentless. Zerathes seemed determined to crush Eli at every turn, throwing challenge after challenge his way. Toxic air, acidic rain, and unstable terrain made even the simplest tasks life-threatening. Every moment outside his makeshift shelter was a gamble, with the environment itself acting as a predator, always waiting for a misstep. Eli adapted quickly, repurposing his limited tools to meet the planet's threats. Using his suit's filtration system, he extracted trace amounts of breathable air from the toxic atmosphere. He crafted basic traps from scavenged materials, hoping to catch any form of sustenance that could survive Zerathes' conditions. His hands worked tirelessly, his movements precise and calculated. Every action had purpose. One evening, while inspecting the cave for structural stability, Eli noticed something peculiar. Large claw marks etched deep into the stone walls. Whatever had made them was massive, and from the pattern, intelligent enough to mark its territory. It wasn't long before he heard the first sound, a guttural growl reverberating through the cave system, shaking the air and igniting primal fear in his chest. He crept toward the sound, careful to remain unseen, and what he saw stopped him cold. Emerging from the shadows was a creature unlike anything he had ever encountered. It stood twice his height, its body rippling with muscle covered in thick, iridescent scales. Its eyes glowed faintly, scanning the cave with a predatory precision. This was no mindless beast. This was a hunter, and Eli had trespassed into its domain. The creature didn't attack immediately, as if assessing him, testing his resolve. Eli stood still, his mind racing through possibilities. He couldn't fight it, he didn't have the strength or weaponry. Running was equally futile, the creature would overtake him in seconds. Instead, he relied on his observations, recalling the patterns he'd seen in its movements. It wasn't mindlessly aggressive. It had boundaries. Eli slowly backed away, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. The beast tilted its head, watching him closely but not advancing. It was an opening, however small, and Eli took it. He retreated to his corner of the cave, reinforcing the entrance with hastily assembled barriers. But he knew this wasn't over. The next few days were a careful game of avoidance and study. Eli watched the creature from a distance, noting how it moved, what it ate, and how it interacted with its environment. It was territorial, yes, but it also seemed to act with purpose. It wasn't attacking indiscriminately, it was defending its home. In time, Eli began testing boundaries. He left small offerings of food outside the barrier, scraps from his traps, carefully wrapped to prevent contamination. The creature initially ignored them, but eventually, it began taking the offerings, its movements slow and deliberate. The hostility lessened, replaced by something almost like curiosity. Eli recognized the opportunity. This wasn't just a beast. It was intelligent, and intelligence could be reasoned with. For the first time since landing on Zarathes, he felt a flicker of hope. This creature wasn't an enemy, it might just be an ally. Days turned into weeks, and the uneasy truce between Eli and the creature began to transform into something unexpected. The offerings he left outside the barrier became a routine. Each time, the creature would approach cautiously, inspecting the food before taking it. Eli started to notice subtle changes in its behavior. The low growls that once echoed through the cave were now softer, almost inquisitive. Eli began pushing boundaries. One day, instead of leaving the food outside, he sat nearby, keeping still as the creature approached. It was a tense moment, the air thick with uncertainty. The beast loomed over him, its massive form blocking out the faint light from the cave entrance. It sniffed the air, eyes locking onto his, searching for any sign of threat. Eli remained calm, his breathing steady. Slowly, the creature took the offering and retreated without aggression. Encouraged, Eli started observing it more closely. He noticed scars along its body, evidence of battles fought and won. Some wounds were fresh, poorly healed, and likely infected. It wasn't just a predator, it was a survivor, much like him. One evening, he decided to take a risk. When the creature approached, he carefully extended his hand, holding a small, makeshift medicinal salve he had crafted. The creature hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing, but it didn't attack. Eli moved slowly, applying the salve to one of its wounds. The creature flinched but didn't lash out. Over the next few days, this act of care became a ritual. Eli treated its injuries, and in return, the creature began to exhibit behaviors that bordered on protective. It started staying near the cave entrance at night, warding off other predators that ventured too close. He named it Valka, a name that felt fitting for such a formidable yet intelligent being. Valka responded to the name, tilting its head slightly whenever Eli spoke it aloud. It was more than just a beast, it was a sentient companion, capable of understanding and even trusting him. Their bond grew stronger as they began working together for survival. Valka's keen senses and immense strength complemented Eli's ingenuity and resourcefulness. Together, they navigated the harsh terrain of Zarathes, foraging for resources and defending against threats. On one occasion, a pack of smaller but vicious predators ambushed them. Eli used fire and noise to scatter the creatures while Valka tore through them with brute force. The partnership wasn't one-sided. Valka began bringing back food, dropping it near Eli's camp. It wasn't just survival, it was a shared effort, a mutual reliance that transcended species. For the first time since arriving on the planet, Eli felt a strange sense of companionship. In Valka, he He saw a reflection of humanity's own struggles, a life of endurance, adaptation, and survival against impossible odds. Their bond wasn't built on dominance or submission but on respect and understanding. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. On this unforgiving planet, they had become each other's lifeline, and Eli knew that this alliance would be the key to leaving Zerathes alive. The time had come to leave Zerathes. Eli had spent weeks studying the planet's cycles, identifying the brief windows when the storms would subside just enough to make a journey possible. The extraction point was several miles away, across some of the most dangerous terrain he had yet to encounter. Alone, it would have been impossible, but with Valka by his side, the odds felt less insurmountable. Eli prepared meticulously. Using salvaged materials and what little he had left of his survival kit, he constructed a rudimentary sled to carry supplies. Valka watched him work, its eyes tracking his movements with a quiet understanding. It was more than a companion now, it was an equal partner in this mission. The journey began under the faint light of Zerathes' eclipsed sun. The path was treacherous, littered with unstable ground and hidden predators. Acid rain drizzled intermittently, forcing Eli to rely on the patched filtration system in his suit. Valka led the way, its instincts attuned to the dangers lurking in the shadows. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. Midway through their journey, disaster struck. A massive, predatory creature larger than Valka emerged from the jagged terrain, its roar echoing like thunder. It was unlike anything Eli had encountered before, a living embodiment of the planet's hostility. The creature charged, its speed and size overwhelming. Valka met it head-on, unleashing a feral roar of its own. The battle was brutal, a clash of titans that shook the ground beneath Eli's feet. He didn't waste the moment. While the two beasts fought, he quickly assembled an explosive device using fragments of his tools and volatile minerals he'd collected. Timing it perfectly, he hurled the makeshift weapon at the larger predator, striking it in the side. The explosion staggered it just long enough for Valka to deliver a decisive blow. The victory came at a cost. Valka was injured, deep gashes marring its scaled hide. Eli worked quickly, applying the last of his medical supplies to stop the bleeding. Valka growled softly, but there was no hostility in its eyes, only trust. They couldn't afford to rest. The extraction point was close, and the storms were beginning to intensify. When they finally reached the designated area, a Federation ship loomed above, its descent kicking up waves of dust and debris. Eli activated his beacon, signaling for extraction. The landing ramp opened, and a group of alien officials emerged, their expressions a mix of disbelief and shock. Eli stepped forward, battered but unbroken, with Valka towering behind him. The sight was impossible to ignore, a human and the most feared creature of Zerathes standing side by side, not as enemies but as allies. The silence was palpable as Eli addressed the council. "You sent me here to die," he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion. "But humanity isn't defined by weakness. We adapt. We endure. And we build bonds where others see only threats." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances, clearly shaken. Valka let out a low rumble, standing tall as if to reinforce Eli's words. The council had no choice but to acknowledge what stood before them, a testament to humanity's resilience and capacity for connection. As the ship ascended, leaving Zerathes behind, Eli sat beside Valka, the weight of the trial finally lifting. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, but now, it knew better. Together, they had rewritten the narrative, proving that strength wasn't just about survival, it was about unity.